Hi there, this is Ian McTavish, and I've had a request from a couple people to go over how I set up safety quizzes on spreadsheets, and I thought I would just make this public and make it available to anybody. So here we go. So first off, doing it with the Google form is just a convenient way to do it because then everything's in one spot, and there's a Google form, so I use the Octi quizzes as my basis, but there is some adjustment that you need to do. First thing is that if you want to have it set to auto mark, you have to use multiple choice and multiple choice grid. If you do short answer questions, inevitably somebody will provide different answers. So, for example, if the correct answer is 4, you're going to get somebody that's going to put 4.0, or they're going to say 4 is the answer, or they're going to write the word 4. There are ways that you can restrict what they can enter. So if you want it to just be a number, that's a possibility. But anything involving text, it makes it really hard to auto mark. And if you're planning on it requiring text, then you need to recognize that you will need to mark it. Other things is making sure that you set questions such as the name to 0 points. You don't want to have it be docking marks because the person put their name, and that's just not working. So the name doesn't matter. I require them to enter in their email address. It pulls the email address when they are logged in. So that's what I use. The name is more a convenience for myself, but when the name matters, always try to put it in 2 fields, first name and last name. That way you can sort between the 2 different fields and everything. And with some of the settings, there's a couple key ones that I just want to mention. So with the safety quizzes, you can release them and you can set the different methods, whether it's locked mode or whatever. But this is the response section, and this is really important when you're collecting the email addresses. If you set it to verified, then that way, and I'm just going to turn on the pointer here, that way they have to be logged in, and that gives you a verification that it was actually them doing it. And you can set this, it depends on how you want it. The one thing that I do is I do restrict it, but then if you're going to have a group from outside the board come in that you're needing to safety test, this won't work. So you'll need to consider that. And then you're limiting to responses. So the problem with limiting is that if you limit it and they don't pass, then you have to manually go in and remove their entry. The formula I use on the flip side doesn't always show the passing grade. It typically shows the first value of their quiz. So if they take it a second time, it's still going to show up as they failed. So you need to remove their entry. There is a way to modify that formula, but it's already pretty complex. So I thought I would leave that for another video. So the first thing is setting up a spreadsheet. So I set up a spreadsheet with the column for the names. Now, as I mentioned, I like putting names in 2 columns, but in this case, I'm using both because this is what I'm getting when I export from our student admin system, last name, comma, first name, and I'm too lazy to extract that. The ID number, so that's typically their student number. And again, I export all of this from PowerSchool so that I have it. I don't need to double check it. And then what course. So with setting up the spreadsheet, I try to set up all my classes into one sheet because then I can just filter by the course so that I don't have to set up multiple sheets to do the same thing. So going on back into the Google form, there's a link to the sheets when you go into responses, and you're going to select an existing spreadsheet. So I'm just going to switch over. So here's my form for the Google, for the drill press. And so you've got all your questions and everything, and I can see it's out of 13. So under responses, and I just want to highlight that's the settings that I referred to. Under responses, I'm going to link it, and I'm going to select an existing sheet. And the first sheet that I've been using pops up. So I always try to go into the sheet right off the bat so I can go into there. and insert, and that's going to open up my same spreadsheet, and there we go. So I'm just going to quickly take this quiz myself, and I'm just going to do that so that I have some raw data to work with. And I'm just going to randomly answer questions. I don't care if I'm getting them right. And it's telling me, oh, I've got to have a different response for each one. So I'll just do this. So I've just finished the quiz and submit. And there we go. So in here, I now have some data. Now I'm just going to change the result here. So that would be the email address for Grace in my class. So that way I've got some raw data that I can play with. And Grace obviously did not do well on the quiz. Okay, so I've selected. So in the spreadsheet, couple things. First off, renaming the sheet so that it makes sense. You'll notice I use a term called camel case. This is computer science, and basically it's just getting rid of spaces. It will make it easier for you later on, so I find it's a good strategy. So down here, I'm just going to rename this, and I'm going to call this drill press. So there's the name. It's going to be easy for me to find that again. So on the class results sheet, this is where we're going to add an out of, and we're going to add a title, and then in D3, we're going to add a formula. Now, because I've already set up my hand tools, my drill press, I'm going to put in the E column. So I'm going to use the same information, but it's just obviously moved over one. So let's just quickly do that. So here's my class results. And if I want that tab to be first, I can just drag it into the first spot. And then in my drill press, I can see my marks are out of 13. And I'm going to type drill press. And in here, this is where I'm going to type. And I like expanding this formula bar to make it a little bit easier for me to type. So I'm going to work through this form, this thing, and just explain it as I go. First thing is, anytime you want a formula, it's an equal sign. And I'm going to use a whole bunch of different functions. So the first one is if NA. And basically is if this is not a number. So when somebody takes the quiz, they're going to get a numeric result. Anybody that doesn't, they're not. So my formula where I'm pulling the number, if it's not a number, I'm going to get an error. And so this is going to check if it's not a number. So if NA, and you can see as I'm typing, my formula comes up, and I can click on it to select it. And I'm just going to close the bracket so I know that I've got it. And this question mark is really handy because I can read what it actually does. So here's my if it's not a number. And in there, I'm going to do something called a vertical lookup. And what a vertical lookup is it's basically where I'm going to go and look up the value in these vertical columns. And if I find the value, and then I'm going to look up what the result is based on that value. So VLOOKUP, and again, it automatically pops in. I can hit tab to select it. Now, I am putting a closing bracket and a comma and a 0. And what this is so if it's not a number, it's going to run this function, the vertical lookup function. And if it finds the value, then it's going to put in a result. And if it doesn't, then it's going to put in this default result of 0. So that way, anybody that hasn't done the quiz gets a 0 because they haven't completed it. Now, this is where it starts getting complicated. So if it's not a number, look up the result. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to concatenate. And this concatenate, I'm just leaving, I'm going to enter that later on. But concatenate is basically where you're putting text together. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a particular spreadsheet. In my example here, it's hand tools, but now that I'm on drill press, I'll replace that with the name of the drill press spreadsheet. And then I'm looking for a range. So the exclamation mark tells me, okay, on this spreadsheet, look for these values. So I'm going to look in the B column and the C column. And the B column, the $sign, allows me to copy and paste this so I can set up another spreadsheet really easily. And then the number 2 indicates, okay, you found the value in the B column. What is the value in the second column, which would be C? The last thing is false, and false is because I might not have the students enter this quiz in order of their student number or anything. So it's not going to be sorted. So that false makes sure that it keeps looking. So that's that. So that's going to be a little tricky to type. So I just want to double check it, concatenate. So concatenate, there we go. So I'm going to enter that in a bit, and then comma. So this is where I'm going to type drill press. And this is where it's really important to make sure that your typing is correct. And I'm going to go B column, colon, C column. So this orange tells me that, hey, it's finding that information. So I've entered that correctly. So that's good. And then it's the second column, and this tells me what's the index of the column. So that's great. And then false. There we go. So I have all of that. And the colors give me information. So it looks like I'm getting this entered in correctly. So now with going into my concatenate function, I'm going to take my value that's in B3 and I'm going to add the email address. So obviously in a different board, you're going to end up with a different result. So it's not at tldsp.me. So I'm just going to see if I can't really move that. Okay, so in concatenate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type $B3, and you can see it's highlighting B3 there. And at tldsp.me. And if I look at my drill press, in column B that I'm looking at, there's my email address at tldsp.me. So that should give me the values that I want. And again, this $sign, that locks it in. So if I have that $sign, if I take this and copy and paste it into F, it's still going to refer to column B. But if I copy and paste it down to E4, it's still going to refer to column B, but the number 3 will automatically update to the next row. The $sign locks it to an absolute position. If there's no $sign, then it's a relative. So if I'm copying it and moving down, then it's going to increase my row value, the relative amount. And then finally, I should have a number, but that number is going to be a mark out of 13. So I'm going to divide it by what is in the column and the $sign 1. So at the end here, divided, so I'm in column E, $sign 1, and you can see it highlights that. And that way, if I copy and paste this to column F, it will automatically update the F because it's a relative position. But if I go copy and paste down, the number 1's going to always refer to that number so that I'm not getting an average from different things. So that should be my entire thing. So I should be able to hit enter, and it automatically goes, hey, do you want to autofill this? Yes, I do. And there we go. I've got zeros because these people did not take the quiz, whereas Grace, student number 112233, did, and she got a mark of 15%, which is equals 2 divided by 13, which is exactly correct. So that's really handy. The one trick I always do is I always copy and paste a few more. So I'm just going to quickly do that. Control C, Control V. That way, if I add more students to my class, all their data is there. Now, I want to clean up the data a bit, so I'm going to select them. And some strategies that I find, I always use Shift and the arrow keys on my keyboard. That allows me to select things and be very controlled. Some people like just using their mouse. There's different ways to do that, obviously. So now that I've got it selected, there's the format as percent. And I can go here and decrease my decimal places if I want. But there we go. The other thing that I like doing is the colors. So under format, there's something called conditional formatting. So if I highlight all of those and go to format and go to conditional formatting, I have some options here. And what I like doing is this color scale where I set it as a percent so I can quickly see if somebody's got red, then they have not passed it. If they've got green, they have passed. So I can set that to any range whatsoever. And so in this particular case, my 0, I'm going to set that as red. Whereas if you got 50%, that's yellow. And if you passed it, you've got a green. And I'm just double checking something. I am not sure why Grace is getting... She should have a failing grade here, so I'm not sure what happened there. So I just... D3 to E. There we go. I don't know how I set... Oh, I think I had set up... I'm just going to delete that rule. I'm not sure why it didn't set up properly. Anyways, so there we go. So if Grace took that and ended up getting 13, if I go into my class results, I should see it's green and she has passed. So now I have my hand tools, my drill press. I can add my other columns in here. I can, if I want to average, I can just simply go average. And there's a whole bunch of other functions that I can use. So if I want to be able to find the maximum value, whoops. So the maximum value allows me to quickly go and go, okay, if I was to do this for quizzes or something, I could see what their maximum mark is. So it's a very handy technique for doing this. And that's the end. I hope that's useful. So just let me know if you can use it.